Hey guys, today I want to talk about something that I have thought about for a very long time about bringing to the public's attention. Um, what I am about to say is going to be taken a couple different ways. If I'm going to get criticized, I'll be ridiculed, I'll be scorned on, I'll be appreciated, and people will thank me for it, um, and people will hate me for it. But there is a gigantic common misconception when it comes to cue making. And the reasons that we have this common misconception it is a honestly it's a well kept secret. It really is. Now, I don't mind sharing it because, quite frankly, I have nothing to hide. Um, After 30 plus years of cue making, I can say things like I'm about to say. Now, what people hear and conceive about cue making and how long it takes and that type of thing. That's what this is all about. Um, when you order a cue, whether it be custom or in process, the first thing that the customer likes to ask, and it never fails, um, how long does it take to make a custom cue? How long will I have to wait? Well, the truth is, it boils down to two things. One, how far behind or our backlog, how much we have going on ahead of you. And two, material readiness. And then there's always the inevitable third thing. Cue makers, all cue makers, including myself, are procrastinators. We are. Um, so we tell our clients, and I'm guilty of this too. I have done this before myself. We tell our clients that it depends on the materials and it depends on material readiness and how soon I can work with the material and that kind of thing. And of course, what you want in the queue, and that'll help determine how long it will take to make it. And to a degree, it does. Um, but and you'll hear answers like, well, it could take anywhere from 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, uh, 10 years. But when you get into the over 5 year mark, you're typically talking to somebody that has a very large backlog. um, but the truth of the matter is, when it comes to using the excuse of material readiness, if you, and this doesn't apply to every key maker, but if you have material that is ready to be used, the moisture content is 8% or below. I would even venture out to say 9%. But I have built cues at 9% and been just fine. Um, 8 to 9% or below in moisture content, you can build a cue. You know, you can put it together, and here's where the tricky part comes in. Here's where all the backlash is going to come from. And I have years of experience and customers out there that can back me up on this. You can produce a cue if the moisture content is correct. You can produce a cue from start to finish, nonstop. And when I say nonstop, yes, you do need to let the wood rest in between turnings, but in all honesty, you can literally get by with letting it rest for 5 days. Sometimes even less. So if you have the proper shop environment and a very controlled environment, and this wood has lived in this environment for any length of time, you can get by with every other day taking passes. So theoretically, Say I was going to build you a Merry Widow queue. No points, no inlays, no wrap, letting the wood do the talking. That queue could theoretically be produced and warranted and guaranteed not to warp, as long as it's cored, in probably 3 days. And I'm not joking. And, other key makers that watch this, and I hope they do, they're going to say, oh, no, that's bullshit. You got to let it warp. You got to let it rest. You got to turn it slowly. Well, no, you don't. If the material is, again, 8%, 9%, turn it, work with it, use it, core it. You know, that's the important part. If it's a solid piece of material that is not being cored, yes, it will take longer. But if you core that wood properly and the moisture content is where it needs to be, then there is no reason that you cannot produce a plain Jane Merry Widow in 3 to 4 days from the time you start putting it together till the time it goes into a case. And, here again, there are going to be, and I fully expect it, there are going to be people that highly disagree with that. But, even potentially my partner in this channel, he may disagree with that, and that's okay. But I know for a fact, without a doubt, that a plain Jane Merry Widow can be produced in 3 to 4 days and never warp, uh, never have an issue with it. Now, taking away from mechanical failures, improperly built or improperly constructed queues, well, that's another story. But if you properly build that queue, it can be done in 3 to 4 days. Now, you put in points and inlays and wraps and things like that. Yeah, it's going to take longer. But the point that I'm trying to make, and what I'm trying to get across to the customer and the end user and the general public, is that there is no reason to not work on the queue. Um, once you begin the assembly process, there's no reason that you can't work on it almost every day, at least every other day, and be fine with it. Again, the key point is it needs to be cored, but and the right moisture content. But if you have both of those elements throughout the building process, then it boils down to just a damn excuse. I mean, it really does. And I'm sorry to say it. And I have been guilty of the very same thing myself. You know, um, we as queue makers, the majority of us, unfortunately, will use the idea of we have to let that wood rest. We will use that and we will capitalize on that. And we will let that allow us to take our time. Okay. And it's the nature of the beast. It's how we are. And that's just never going to change. Now, I'm so going to get crucified for this. Um, I hate to break that bubble and or bust that bubble and tell everybody this kind of thing, but it's the truth. You know, um, in 30 plus years, I have probably had maybe 2 queues that have warped uh, in my life, or at least that have come back to me and said, "Hey, this queue is warped." Um, and the reason being is because probably the moisture content wasn't ready, something like that. It definitely wasn't due to I didn't let it rest long enough. The wood does need to rest. It does need time to relax. And you'll hear people like Joe Behringer, I don't mind calling out names, in his how-to videos. That's the number one thing he preaches is you got to let that wood rest. You got to keep it happy. You don't piss off the wood. Well, it's bullshit. It really is. Um, how do you think all these production companies produce all these cues in a given week? Do you think they started this crap 20 years ago and just staged it out and timed it to where, oh, okay, yeah, I can work on this one next week because it's been resting for 2 years? Of course, I'm exaggerating. No, they don't. They get the moisture content down to where it needs to be if they don't receive it in that form, and they just get to work and they build a queue. Well, the same thing can be done and is done with custom queue makers, like myself. And yeah, most people are just simply afraid to say this to the general public. You know, it takes away one of the excuses of why that person's queue isn't complete yet. Um, like I said, I'm guilty of it myself. Uh, I have done it, but I've said the same thing before. Um, and at the end of the day, I would definitely say that 90+% of all queue makers have done the very same thing. You know, it's just par for course, and it's just what we hear. Now, again, I am sure, and I really don't care, I am sure that I'm going to get criticized on this topic and heckled about it, and oh well, your cues must play like shit, that kind of thing. You know what? I really don't care. I know that I build a very quality product. They are very sought after, and they hold up. They don't warp, and I back them up, you know, with a lifetime warranty. I feel so good about my production process that that warranty doesn't just go to the person that I sold the Q to, it goes to the person that they may sell it to. When I say lifetime, I mean my lifetime. Okay. And I don't, in general, I don't sit back and let the wood rest for 2, 3 months in between. I'll give it a couple of days. I'll check it. I'll see if it moves. If it did, great. I'll take another pass, check it again, see if it moves. If it did, I'll take one more pass and check it, see if it moves. And if it moves that time, I'm going to throw it away and start over because that's going to be a problem piece of wood. You know, um, and I have tested this. The one thing that is more subject to warp than anything else is your shaft when you're producing one. I have taken, and Ed knows this because we talked about it, I have taken a piece of Canadian hard rock maple, 1 inch round by 33 inches long. I got to cut some off to 30 inches. And I have taken that and turned it into a shaft in 1 day. And what I did, this was a test. What I did is I took a 1 inch, this is dowel form. I took a 1 inch by 30 dowel and I put it on the CNC lathe and I turned it down to from that stage down to a final stage, final pass in what was it? It took 37 minutes, I believe it was. And I put a date on it and I hung it up in the shop. And I let it sit there. It sat there for 1 year. And on its 1 year anniversary, I pulled it down. Now, I didn't touch it for that entire year. I pulled it down to that 1 year anniversary. I put it on my machine, on my lathe. I spun it, and it still ran true. And keep in mind, I turned it down at one sitting in 37 minutes versus taking 10 thousandths off and letting it rest for a month and taking 10 thousandths off and letting it rest for a month that you commonly hear about. Um, the wood is either going to be a good piece of wood that isn't going to warp, or it's going to be a crap piece of wood that does warp. It's not so much about resting time. I understand the theory behind it, but that's not the case. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, Miss. 15 minutes almost. I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted everybody to know how I felt about the whole thing. And like I said, I'm sure that I'm going to get some blowback from it. But here again, I can promise you deep down inside, that is 90+% of all cue makers. And that's just how it is. I appreciate it, guys. I hope this doesn't rub anybody the wrong way. I'm sure that it will, but you can definitely 110% hands down, I don't care who tells you differently, you can definitely build a very quality cue on a very regular basis without the downtime, without the resting in between. No more than a couple days, rest time. So with that being said, I am going to get out of here, get ready for tomorrow's production. I have 20 cues in process right now, and they have a ways to go before they're even close to being done. Not because of resting time, but because there's so much to do to them. I hope that you found this video interesting. Please do me a favor and share this to other people, especially cue makers, because I can't wait to hear what they have to say after I just got through telling you everybody this very thing. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.